What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve podcast, number one real estate investing podcast in the whole wide world. I'm Jason from Hard Money Bankers. Sit next to me, Ian Horowitz, as usual, co-host from Equity Warehouse. Fun little topic today. Topic that I'm looking forward to. I know we've done some interviews in the past related to Airbnbs. I can't say that we've interviewed anyone that has scaled an Airbnb portfolio as fast as our guest Lame, who we're going to interview here in a second. 70 units over the past 12 months. Pretty impressive. For everybody tuning in for the first time, welcome. If you are a follower of our podcast via video on YouTube or on Apple or anywhere you follow and listen to podcasts, welcome. Our promise to you is we're going to keep this fun. We're going to keep it entertaining, and hopefully you will learn a bunch and get motivated to go out there and kick ass inside your real estate investing business. What's up with you today, Ian?
Nothing, man. I just finished up a great event. Our buddy Mikey at Clubhouse 54 just hosted a bunch of real estate investors here local to Philly. We'll probably be doing another one again next month in January. So if you're interested, you're near Philly, you like golf, you want to talk real estate, keep an eye posted for that. So that was a really good event, really motivating, having everyone come through. I didn't want to leave, but knowing I get to bring my man Lame on and talk about his growth, his scale, his background. The man's an open book. I'm super excited to bring him on. So it's a great way to cap the day off. So I can sit here and try to butcher the guy's story, or we could just bring him in and let's talk to him.
Absolutely. Lame, how are you?
I'm doing good, fellas. Man, I appreciate you guys having me. I'm happy to be here.
Hell yeah. What if you could just give everybody background, where you're located and what your business looks like today.
Absolutely. So my name is Lame Kinikini. I reign from the blessed state of Utah, baby. So I'm in Orem. It's just a suburb just south of Salt Lake City. I currently own and operate Elkridge Management. We founded the company back in February. And so we've actually done, 70 units in less than 12 months. You guys are cutting me short, but,
yeah, well, I mean, we gotta humble your ass. That's all.
Yeah. We're out of Utah. We're in a few other states as well, but 90% of our portfolio is here. And essentially our company deals all things short-term, mid-term rental. So that's what we do.
Yeah. Let's chat a little bit about that. I know we use the term Airbnb, but I feel like that's just the brand for short-term rentals that a lot of people utilize. So how did you get started in the short-term rental game? I guess in February.
Yeah. Really, really good question. So I should say the idea of the company started 3 years ago. So 3 years, I've been passively investing in real estate for the last handful of years, 3-4 years. Just doing it kind of the normal, boring way, right? Just buying one property, renting it out, buying another, renting it out. And I remember this is back in, I think, 19. I had a property that I was struggling knowing what to do with. And I was like, I've heard a lot about Airbnb, so I'm just going to throw it up. And I remember month one, I netted $1,500 on a single family home. And I was just like, holy cow, this is crazy. And so that's kind of the birth of the idea. And I didn't really dive into really building a company around it until the beginning of this year. So Elkridge Management officially started in February. What I didn't realize is over the years of passively doing real estate, you kind of become an expert without realizing it, just as you're, kind of honing your craft on the few properties that I did have. And, I, at a certain point in time, I was like, man, let's just see if I send it, let's just see what happens. And I did, and it's been a good thing ever since. So.
No, I mean, dude, you're talking we're doing some crazy stuff here. We're doing 70 houses, less than 12 months. Actually, I think, was it at Stratton's event when you really started to his winning mastermind event is when you were like, all right, I'm going to go do this?
Dude, that's exactly it. I mean, honestly, that mastermind, shout out to Stratton Brown, homie of mine. That's where I met you, Ian. And that, that event is really what changed my life. It's funny because prior to that, I was that guy that was like, dude, these masterminds are freaking scams. Nobody's making money or doing anything. But really, it was kind of like a light bulb went off in my head when, you got up there, Ian, Kyle, Stanley got up there, Lowe's. A lot of these guys got up and were just like, hey, we're no different than you. We just knew certain things and we executed on them. And so that was yeah, that was a huge turning point in terms of building the company for sure.
Walk us through maybe your first deal. I know was that $1,500 net deal? Was that
Yeah,
the
that
first
was
one?
so that was that was a property that I owned, and that was the first kind of taste of Airbnb that I'd gotten, because I was like, hey, I could traditionally rent this, but I'm only going to cash flow a couple $100, but let's see what Airbnb does if I throw some furniture in it and go from there. And that was 3 years ago. Fast forward to February, the start of this business, where I kind of started. There's three real primary ways of making money in Airbnb. There's arbitrage, which essentially is going and signing a lease, having an addendum in there that allows you to sublease, and you take the profits in between. There's co-host, which is just services for income. So I'm just managing somebody else's property for a portion of their profits. And then the third that we've got into like recently a lot of is creative finance into Airbnb. So I've actually purchased in the last 8 weeks, I've purchased double-digit doors via creative finance with the intent to the exit strategy of Airbnb. And so that's kind of the three ways to make money. Where I started, to answer your original question, was the arbitrage, right? Because to me, I didn't know about creative finance at the time. I didn't have a strong income with the company. So I was like, where can I start with the least amount of red tape and the least amount of obstacle? And that was just finding a landlord on Facebook and throwing furniture in there and throwing it up. So
yeah, let's go through the arbitrage, the arbitrage game, because I'm familiar with it. Ian's familiar with it. You're obviously familiar with it, but a lot of folks watching or listening might not be. And I think there's some like brain blow up, like takeaways that people could have.
Yeah. So arbitrage specifically is really just the concept of leveraging somebody else's property to make an income on Airbnb. And for me, that was like the easiest and most logical step to start. And it was, a lot of it was just because I could essentially start without having to wait for credit, income verification, going and getting a mortgage. And so really the way that I started arbitrage was I just went on Facebook and started finding people that would be willing to rent it out to me and let me sublease it. Right. And so essentially that's how I started. And you can really, that's how I scaled from 1 to really 15 really quickly. And then once I established income there, it provided a lot of other opportunities and opened a lot of doors. But a lot of people, the biggest myth in really the real estate game is thinking that you have to own a property or you have to acquire a large sum of money to go start. Like arbitrage is as simple as like, hey, go find a studio unit at a complex somewhere. Just go sell the complex manager that they can trust you to make payments and make money, and off you are after you buy a few couches, right? So
yeah, so you go either into whatever, like you said, an apartment building and lease a place from a manager, or just go to a private homeowner.
Absolutely.
Lease the place. Let's say it costs whatever. I don't know what average is around you. Let's just say around here, $2,000 a month to rent out the property. You go in, you furnish it like you would furnish your own house, and off you go. Throw that on the short-term rental websites, and start leasing that thing up and keeping the difference.
Yep, absolutely.
What? Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So it's that simple. But like, I gotta ask is, where do you even get the confidence to go out and do the arbitrage game? Right? Like like you said, you got to go convince someone that like, listen, man, I'm going to rent your house. I'm being completely transparent with you, but I'm not going to screw you over. Like, where did you get that confidence? Like, where in your experiences do you feel like it was like, man, all these things helped me to get to this point where I was like, screw it, I'm just going through it.
Yeah.
Going for it,
No, that's a really, really good question. So my background and what I believe to be my superpower is sales. So I actually cut my teeth. I spent 7 years in the door-to-door direct sales industry. And for those of you that don't know door-to-door, that is, in my opinion, it's the elite of sales, right? Very few people can knock on a door. Homeowner comes out pissed, doesn't want to see you, hates you. And then 30 minutes later, you're walking out the door, cold Coke in hand, you have a signed purchase agreement, and they want me to marry their daughter, right? What happens in between that process, like, is very high level skills. And so to answer your question directly, that's kind of where I found that confidence. I mean, calling somebody about an arbitrage is nothing compared to knocking a cold door and selling that, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, that's kind of where I feel like a lot of that confidence and skill set came from.
Yeah. And I mean, for those that don't know, like, Utah is the capital, I believe, of door-to-door sales, right? Like, isn't more door-to-door sales done there than in any other state?
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's a lot of hubs here. Yep. A lot of big companies. Yep.
And a lot of sales centers, right? Like, a lot of call agents. Like, it's just kind of ingrained in that culture. I'll be honest, when I went out to Salt Lake, I thought I was going to some like little podunk town. No offense. And I got to Salt Lake and I was like, holy shit, this place is like, this is huge, man. Like, it was kind of overwhelming. But you know, it's really interesting. Just like, I was actually asking Jason this the other day, because I was like, hey man, like, do you feel like, I don't know if it's because I'm going out there and just hanging with you guys, and I'm like, man, it seems like the West Coast is like, just like everybody's on fire versus like what I have here. I'm like in a shell here, but I do wonder if there's like different cultures throughout the country, and like how that looks, or what that, you know, what it looks like all across the country. I mean, you know, a lot of your Airbnbs are local to you. I mean, how do you feel like when you're talking out of state with owners? Do you get the same response as you do to the local stuff?
Dude, that's a really insightful question, because I really don't think you understand that there are a whole mix of cultures, and understanding the culture is important unless you've done business in multiple places. A lot of my door-to-door industry experience came from the South, and we all know the South, like, it's just a different vibe there. But like, in speaking to Utah's culture specifically, yeah, it's hella unique. I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here. The LDS Church, Mormon Church, I'm a member as well. We're kind of breeded early, like in kind of the direct to home sales communication vibe, because we all serve 2-year missions in different countries, which I did. I served mine in Ghana. And that lends itself to like a very unique entrepreneurial culture in Utah that, to be honest, has lended it's lended itself to my success. Like, I feel like just being surrounded by, you know, a lot of people that love the idea of being an entrepreneur, it's helped, and it's made me think big. So for sure, culture is huge.
Oh, dude, we're going to get into the conversation we had out in Fresno, because we wound up in a really deep conversation on Saturday morning or whatever day it was. It was eye-opening experience. But before that, Jake, put up Caitlin's question. I think she's referring to, how do you even start the conversation with an owner to say, hey, I'm interested in leasing your house, but I want to do this? Like, how do you break down that barrier?
Yeah, really good question. So I'd say a lot of people, when they're going to start a conversation with a landlord in terms of how to, you know, in terms of selling yourself on the idea of renting their home, a lot of times we just throw up like what we do onto them, right? I think naturally most people will call the landlord and they'll be like, hey, I want to do this. This is the value, this, that. But I like to lead heavy with like questions, and I try and develop enough question-based selling, like really good questions that help me understand kind of the landlord, where they're at, to then allow me to kind of develop a pitch and know what to say that's going to actually resonate with them, right? So for example, over the last, 8 months, 10 months, as I've spoken with all these landlords, it's funny because if you ask enough questions, you'll find patterns. And like with landlords specifically, there's 3 major questions or 3 major objections that they always have. And if you can address them directly, you're sitting in a good spot. The first one always is finances, like in liability. They want to know if something happens, how are they protected? The second is involvement. For whatever reason, landlords think that they have to be more involved than they actually do. And letting them know it's completely passive is a big bonus. And then the third is kind of money. They want to know, like, hey, what's my risk with the rents? Like, is it going to be direct deposited? Are you in a position to be able to pay me if it doesn't make rent? And so those are kind of the 3 common objections that every landlord has. And you'll kind of know how to articulate those and nail them down when you ask enough questions. And that's what to answer your question, Caitlin, that's what I would focus on, is figure out how to have open conversations at the very beginning to identify their pain points, what they value, and then directly address those 3 objections, and you're going to be in a good spot.
And I would guess with where we are in the real estate market over the last few months, things have changed.
Oh,
right.
big time.
So a lot of folks might have originally wanted to sell their property, then they wanted to rent the property. A lot of folks aren't going to sell properties because they're in a 3% interest rate. So they're looking to potential rent out stuff. So I would guess that your job, your life, and everyone else's that want to do this arbitrage game might be easier.
100%.
And I agree with what you just said with before you even kind of explain to them, hey, I'm going to be, playing the arbitrage game with that's not how you obviously state it. I'm going to be whoring out your property, but that's not how you state it either. But point being is that you get all this, I get it with the door-to-door sales stuff, because I always believe door-to-door salesmen are the absolute best if they do it the right way. And, it's heavy in the construction industry and the real estate industry and the solar industry and places like that. And I like talking to some of those guys. And if they, all of a sudden, like all of their needs are getting satisfied, and it's like, oh, by the way, this is what I'm going to be doing with this property. No, that's so I'm curious to see what will happen, in coming months and coming years as well, but I bet it's easier. On the stuff that did you want to add something on that real quick, or do you want?
Well, yeah, all I was going to add is, like, you're exactly right, Jason. I mean, the market's changed, guys. We are now in the driver's seat when it comes to being a buyer, but also being an arbitrage tenant, and understanding where the market's at and kind of communicating effectively the benefits of the landlord in this model is huge. I mean, and if you can just articulate that clearly in a market that's, really, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of fear, like, they're easy to come by. They're absolutely, it's a lot easier than you think.
Are most of your units in areas that, like, resort areas, or areas that, there's a demand for, out-of-state folks to come in and rent?
Really good question. So this is, some nuggets that we found. The majority of I'd say 95% of my portfolio is single family homes, and 80% of them are in normal residential areas. And what we found is that these areas that aren't necessarily destination areas, they're areas that have consistent demand because of the avatar, right? So for example, here in Utah, you have the LDS Church. You have a ton of universities. You have the University of Utah. You have Brigham Young University, Utah Valley University. These are 3 major universities, all within about an hour of each other. And because some of these just normal suburb areas host people that are coming for graduation, people that are coming for church events, baptisms, marriages, all of that, those are all things that an avatar will still go to in a recession. And so what we've found is that some of these suburb, just normal areas actually have more consistent demand and better bottom line profits than our destination areas, because the number one thing that goes off anybody's list in a recession is vacations. And so all these destination spots are actually taking a huge hit, while we're actually thriving off of these just normal suburb places, just because we have consistent demand because of the avatar we're serving.
Yeah, no, and that makes a lot of sense. I was looking at a house right at the start of COVID as a vacation rental, and I was like, we should buy this. And then I got scared of COVID because none of us really knew in February 2020, March 2020, what's going on. Yep. I'll keep my political belief out of that, but we didn't know where the market was going, right? And I chickened out, and the realtor sat there and he begged me up and down. He's like, dude, I'm telling you, everybody's going to give up their overseas vacations and they're going to vacation home. They're going to vacation where they're comfortable. And had I listened to that guy, that was probably almost a 7-figure payday that I screwed up. But look, it is what it is. You can't live in the past. And I think that's really smart. And I don't think enough people recognize that we have 3 workforce housing. I don't even call them workforce. We have 3 houses in the town that we grew up in that are Airbnbs, and they crush. And they crush because people are coming back to visit family.
Yep.
And they don't want to stay with mom, or they all have kids and extended families, and the houses just can't handle people, and it's crazy. And I think you guys are onto something. I know what's his name, Noah, who's another friend of ours that does Airbnbs. He does a lot of workforce type housing for people that are working all throughout the country. And I guess we should stop using Airbnb and start using short-term rentals.
For sure.
When we were out in Fresno, we were talking about there's Airbnb, there's VRBO. You're listing on a lot of sites. Like, where else are you listing to chase these rentals? And what's that look like for you to get away from the Airbnb platform?
Yeah, really good question. So there's a ton of platforms. People obviously know the two that you mentioned. Some of the other ones that we use is Furnish Finders, ALE Solutions, Hot Pads, and then some of the more direct ways of finding occupancy. So insurance contracts, government contracts, and professional contracts. So just essentially getting in the doors of, for us, Utah has a huge tech presence. There's a lot of big tech companies here, Adobe, Domo. And so I've managed to essentially, with not all of them, but a handful of them, get in the door to kind of try and demand occupancy by saying, hey, look, I know you guys are traveling people in for trainings, whatever. I have essentially a portfolio all over the place that are a hell of a lot better than hotels that you can place people, right? And so what people don't understand is in the STR game and the midterm rental game, you can demand the dollars if you just know where to look and you're willing to put in the work to find it. Like, yeah. I think too many people ask the wrong questions in STR. They're like, what does the market look like? What is this? And it's like, who cares what the market looks like? I'm in a place where demand will always be there. I just need to have enough grit to be able to go find it and capture it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think insurance is a huge one. Not enough people are talking about that. And we get calls all the time about like, hey, my house just burned down. Can you host me? But the problem is we've booked out so many days ahead and I had you start auditing my stuff. And that was interesting too. Like what you were talking about not booking out so far ahead of time and having certain tolerances set up to make your house available to even host these types of events. You've had the foresight to do that. What are a few tips people could utilize to be able to attract some of these type of tenants?
Yeah, really good question. So really your pricing strategy is everything. There's different softwares. I have a tech stack now of like 9 different softwares that we use to automate our business. I'd say one of them that's probably at the top of the list is Price Labs. And Price Labs is a software that essentially will determine kind of the demand of the market, the seasonality, and it'll adjust your price daily. It'll adjust your price literally daily based on the demand. But what I've done and managed to do is, because I've understood my avatar and who I'm serving and what I'm after, I put different price sets in there to essentially try and cater to that avatar. And so, and I think a mistake that people make in the STR game is they are constantly trying to serve everybody. And if you're doing that, there's a lot of money left on the table. And so I'd say the biggest tip is utilizing essentially the resources you have to try and identify your avatar and then put all your systems in place, whether it's Price Labs, dynamic pricing, all that, to essentially serve and meet that demand.
Right. So, yeah, no, it all makes sense. And I know like you got your own website to help drive some traffic, which I think is really, really smart. What else are you doing? A lot of offline bookings, as in like people are skipping through Airbnb and actually finding your own website. And what's that website? elkridgemanagement.com? Yep.
elkridgemanagement.com, or Elkridge Management. It's managementmgmt.guestybookings.com. So either way you can find us. But that's I mean, there's a lot of money to be made when you can start essentially, there we go. And so, and that there's a link on there for our direct booking site. But anyways, this is kind of where you can go to, and we drive traffic here because when you can avoid essentially when you can avoid like the platform fees, like Airbnb, VRBO, they take about generally 20 to 30% between the client and us as the host. When you can avoid that, you're increasing your margin and a lot of times saving the client money as well. And so we do a lot of that just to essentially cake our margins. So yeah.
Yeah, Jason's trying to pull up your booking site. Would you say it's Elkridge?
It's elkridgemgmt.guestybookings.com.
Guest, G-E.
Guesty. Yeah, with a Y. Guesty, and then bookings.com. So it's elkridgemanagement.guestybookings.com. Yeah, so get rid of that and put it at the very end. Yep.
Yeah, and one thing, the reason we're bringing it up is not only to showcase everything you're doing, which
do that right.
Jason.
Let me see. Yeah, it should be right.
There you go. But the reason we're bringing this up is because we also want to talk about amenities, right? Like you got all your different.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like, and I don't know, maybe if you know a house right off the top of hand that he can click on and is like talking about amenities, like what do guests want, right? Because like we have a buddy of ours, Pete. He still goes and puts burger cookies, which is like a famous thing around Baltimore. He literally puts cookies in all of his units so the guests have them, and bottles of wine and stuff like that. Like what amenities are you seeing people want, even though they're in a quote unquote suburb type house and not something super luxury?
Yeah, really good question. So when it comes to different, and part of the answer to this question is understanding who you're serving. In Utah, we get a lot of families, and it's really cold and mountainy. And so our amenities that tend to pop are typically properties that have some kind of game room. So if you see that middle one, you see how it says big home for all the fam. Obviously, even that tagline is dedicated to we're trying to reach families. And you see there's a painting there. If you click on it, there's a game room in there. We have some gaming stuff in there for people, board games, whatnot. That serves, see, this is, there's literally 6 beds in there. This is a kid's room. We did some paintings on it. Because I understand my avatar, I'm catering all of this to meet that. So game rooms for kids, cool, unique, beautiful pictures. So a lot of it is understanding your avatar. But I'd say probably the number one amenity that tends to give a lot back is hot tubs. Like hot tubs are huge, especially in mountainy areas, but also in kind of vacation rental places. People like to get into a hot tub at night. And so, but what's crazy is, this property, guys, this is an old property. It's probably over 100 years old. You can see we've done a little bit of renovations on it, kind of put some lipstick on it. And this property does consistently anywhere between $5,000 to $6,000 a month. And this is right by UVU, right by BYU, which are two main reasons why people are coming here. But it's not sexy. This is a normal house. Like when you look through those pictures, if you know building and stuff like that, it's tiny. It's tiny. You can see that it's a lot of old features, but because I understand my avatar, it's in a great location. And I'm essentially showcasing the amenities, the titles, everything like that to meet my avatar. We cash flow well. This does better than some of my properties in St. George. St. George is it's a destination spot, like a lot of resorts and everything like that. This will do consistently more income than that property, just because of the avatar. Go ahead.
Okay, so this house here, is this an arbitrage? Is this a owner or?
So this one is an arbitrage, correct? This one is an arbitrage.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind sharing what you're paying for rent on something like this?
Yeah. So for this property, there's 2 units to it. So, and that's the other big reason why I like this property is not only location, but I'm renting 2 different parts of it. The front of the property, and then there's a back that's connected. And for all in expenses, everything rent, I'm at $3,800. And then I think last month we kind of had a slower month. I think we made about $5,000, but during the summers we were doing 6,000 plus. And so all in on some months we were, netting $2,000. Some other months it was 1,000. So it really just depends on, the seasonality and things like that. But this one is a good one.
So that's a good frame of reference. So someone's looking at it. You could literally get started today and look. I know Caitlin hot tubs. Believe me, the first thing I want to tag Daniel right now. Me and Caitlin, we own a few Airbnbs together with my business partner Dan, her brother, and we got into a big beef about a hot tub. He's like, "Oh, I'm not dealing with it." And I was like, "I know hot tubs." But obviously you've created scale, and I was going to ask you a question, but actually I see Caitlin's got another good question. Is you keep talking a lot about Avatar. No, Caitlin, we're not talking about the movie. Can you explain how you've identified your avatar or the person that's renting your house? Like how are you figuring that out either before you get into it or after you've gotten into it? Like when are you looking at what you believe the demographic of the renter is going to be?
Really good question. So when it comes to avatar, quote unquote, what that means is essentially my client, right? my ideal client. And the way that we've identified this, and I don't know why more people don't do this, but the way that I've identified my avatar is essentially asking 3 primary questions for everybody that books through us. The first one is, where are you visiting from? What part of the state are you visiting? And the last question is, I forget the last question, but there's 3 primary, those 2 questions are enough. But essentially, I think the premise is trying to ask enough questions to identify the purpose and reason that people are coming to visit your place. And if you get enough of that data, then you'll start to see a trend, and you'll start to be able to see who's coming more consistently. And for us, it's been families, large families that are typically coming because of the church or school relations. So the LDS church, or because of university. And just knowing that alone has served us extremely well in being able to go capture demand and take all the money that's on the table.
Right. And there's a reason you don't remember the third question. And this is what I was about to ask before I stopped for Caitlin's question is, dude, I know you're running a big team. I'm sure you got a staff of cleaners. You got a staff of maintenance guys. You have back-end staff.
Yep.
Because one of the biggest things in Airbnbs is the hospitality management side of things, and a lot of people don't realize what it takes. How are you mitigating that risk through in-office personnel, virtual assistants? How are you handling your day-to-day transactions?
Yeah, really good question. So I'm pretty disconnected from the operations of my business by now. And I owe a lot of that to multiple mentors, multiple people in the space that have helped me develop systems that we've created for it to be a self-sustaining machine. So we employ about 40 people now between 3 major categories of our business. It's the design, the customer engagement, and then the operations. And I have Josie Duke. She's basically my CEO who runs everything. And then she has kind of leaders in place under her that are a mixture of people that are here, homegrown in the United States, as well as overseas. We have a lot of VAs from the Philippines. But I'd say that is probably one of the biggest cons to the STR space. And I think I would even maybe put it in the category of a myth. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, Airbnb is great. You can make 3, 5, sometimes 10x a traditional rental, but it's 1,000 times the work. And the only reason it's 1,000 times the work, anybody here that says that, is because they haven't developed enough systems to automate it. I mean, our tech stack by now, we have 9 platforms that we use to be able to automate processes. And then I put people in place to do it. And when you can do that, it allows you to scale as quickly as I have. And I just think that's the nature of business, right? Just figuring out, hey, what system, process, or person do I got to put in place so that I can save my time and grow?
I know Jason's got something to say about that. He loves automation and scaling in that sense.
I'm just listening. I'm listening.
You're probably over there looking for Airbnbs. I mean, you had a short-term rental before they were cool out in Deep Creek, right? Like before.
I had a short-term rental before they had Airbnb, so it made it challenging.
Yeah, way back in the day. So, but no, man. I mean, that's all good stuff because a lot of people forget what it takes or what the effort required to grow and scale. And and Jason and I talk a lot about this. Is like too many guys and gals get involved in real estate. They're like, it's enough. Is it really enough, or you just don't want to do the work to get the next level, right? Like I'm sure in your run, you've had a lot of bumps and bruises.
Amen. Yep. No, and a lot of it is just figuring stuff out. I mean, and to me, this is like the beauty of this industry is like, because I never woke up, I never dreamed of being like a hospitality manager. Like that wasn't ever my dream. That was never my dream. But really, this is just a vehicle of business to get into real estate. And the only reason I'm in it now is because at the very beginning, I was trying to find ways to get into real estate without a ton of your own money and without owning the property. And bingo, you have Airbnb. And so
what do you think? I don't want to say like how scalable is this, because it's very scalable and you can do this do unlimited. Like what's kind of your vision internally? Because there's an economy of scale, I'm guessing. Like there's a number, it's just like, hey, it's just not worth the headache. You cut the bottom 20% that are a pain in the ass, and you find your own avatar, not of customer, but an avatar of property and project that works. Like, what's your kind of longer term game plan with how many units? Do you like the arbitrage game better than owning your own properties, or do you like whatever that third income stream was? I guess managing others. Like, where do you see this going?
Really good question. So originally, when I had started this business, it was like I wanted to be the best management company out there and biggest. And there was I forget the name of it, but there was Sunder. It was a company that they sold for 9 figures, strictly arbitrage. It was strictly arbitrage. They didn't own any of it, and they sold the company for 9 figures. And I remember hearing that story. I was like, that's going to be me, right? But over time, now the reason I'm disconnected from the management space is because now it's all about investing because of the turn of the market. Where we've been really digging our heels into is creative finance. Just to give you an idea, I've purchased 3 properties in the last few weeks, and between acquisition, renovation, and getting it Airbnb ready, I've spent $180,000 on 3 of the last properties to get them on and listed and available, and I own them. Which is wild, right? Because traditionally, if you're going to go buy an investment property, you're going to have to put 20% down, And these are properties that are $600,000 or more. They're beautiful rent-ready properties. And so now my vision has shifted into that to where I'm trying to own a real estate empire. And so I've thrown a lot of my income from my cash flow on the Airbnb management side into creative acquisitions via Airbnb.
Yeah, about the only time a management company is worth the effort, right? Like you're actually making money in a management company because management sucks, right? Like management just blows. It's the worst thing in the world. We all know this. But that's where the money's made. And if you can figure out how to properly grow that and earn income from there and generate it, then it's a benefit because you're doing exactly what you do. You take your active income, you put it into passive investment vehicles, and you grow that until you have a portfolio and you can decide what you want to do.
Amen.
And I think now's a good time to bridge back because I was thinking about how to bridge back to this because we had a insanely powerful conversation the morning of Stratton's last mastermind. You guys did some cold plunges in what appeared to be the coldest pool I've ever seen in my life. You guys are more manly than me. But then we got talking, man. Like, and you breezed over it. And I know Utah is like Mormon Central, and you guys, there's a lot of benefits to it. And we watch Russell Brunson, ClickFunnels, guys growing massive companies. A lot of super successful business operators come out of there. And I asked you, I said, dude, what do you think about that? And I just wanted you to kind of give your answer, kind of like what your mission was like and why you think a lot of people from the Mormon church become successful. I was very intrigued by it. And as you guys know, I'm not a very religious person. I'm a universe guy. So,
yeah, no, that's a great question that I'd be happy to kind of share my experiences and thoughts. So you're talking about a 2-year mission in the Mormon church or the LDS church. They'll send us out and you can kind of get called anywhere. It's per inspiration. The leaders of our church literally will get our application and they'll just close their eyes and pick. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know how they do it, but they're inspired to send us somewhere. I was sent to Ghana, West Africa, and I was there for 2 years. And what people don't understand is when you serve a mission, the church intentionally positions you to assimilate with the culture and people, because that's the only way that you're able to connect to them and have conversations about God, about deity. And so for 2 years of my life, I lived like a West African. I ate what they ate. I lived in the conditions they lived in. No electricity, no running water. And I did that for 2 years between the years of 19 and 21. And that was probably one of the most profound experiences of my life. You put all religion aside, just being that young and willing to have the mental fortitude to stay and do something that hard and that difficult teaches you a lot. I mean, honestly, by the time I got back to America, you can imagine me having come from a place where people, there's really condemning circumstances. People are born in bushes in Africa where they don't even know the concept of electricity. They've never seen it before, right? And here I am an American, Polynesian American coming here, living like this for 2 years, and then going back to America where I walk out and I could pay $1 and get a full meal at McDonald's. You know what I mean? Like that to me was mentally like one of the best experiences of my life, to where you flip that into business. There's no wonder Utah's the capital of door to door, because like what is knocking a door when, we served a mission for 2 years? It's like, I'll knock any door, nothing.
Right. Well, like you said, you assimilated with the people, right? Like you learn other people's cultures and you get involved with that. And I think that's something powerful in business, because too many people are disconnected from their customers. Whether people want to believe it or not, a renter is a customer, a seller is a customer, a vendor is a customer. You need to figure out how to connect with them to be able to grow your company. And I think too many people are too direct and be like, it's all about them. And I've never served a mission. The most I did was work for the fire department, which I guess I won't say I lost a piece of my soul. I gave back a lot through that. But I think you see how other people live, and you kind of take for granted some of that stuff. Because, dude, you were playing football at a super high level, and presumably you leave that and end up in West Africa. So I'm sure it's like a world of difference. Like overnight, your life changes. Well, you know what it's like to get kicked in the teeth, or you can see what it's like to not have the benefits that we have for where we live, I guess is a better way to say it, right?
Absolutely. I think anybody would benefit, no matter your religious beliefs or background. I think anybody would benefit from simply going and seeing what else where other people live in their conditions. And it's funny because a word that's thrown around a lot, and this isn't me getting political in any way, this is just an observation. Oppression is like a huge trigger word in America. Go to Africa for 2 years, then come back to me and use that word.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we are there is no excuse to not be successful here. And really that's the biggest takeaway I took from my mission. And then obviously my relationship with Heavenly Father and all that's played a significant role for me. But just the concept of mental fortitude and just the abundance mentality that you gain from that is priceless.
Yeah, you'll have to work on me on the Heavenly Father stuff next go around. But I'll listen to you. You got two Jews over here, so next go around you can try. So, but no, dude, that's some good shit, man. And I think you truly are taking the abundance mentality and growing what you're growing. And man, it's super impressive to see, because too many people are like, I don't know how to get started. And people ask me all the time and Jason all the time, dude, it's just too hard right now. Well, you don't want it, dude. Like, that's it. Like, there's 4 weeks left in this year. There's 3 weeks left in this year as of today, right? Like, fuck it. Just go out and do it, man. Like, you literally pick up the phone, call someone, I want to rent your house. Next, it's Airbnb. You took a little bit of risk, off you went. Dude, amazing. And I think more people need to take that path. So
well, the real estate industry has been very lazy over the last 10 years because because there's been a lot of liquidity in the marketplace. Folks will just hop on MLS. Hey, I found a deal, and guess what? It's going to be worth more tomorrow than it was today. Well, for folks that have been around for longer periods of time, they know that that's not the case. And what goes up comes down, and the faster it goes up, the faster it's going to come down. And we've seen a lot of change over the last few months with interest rate hikes, short-term and mortgage rates. And, time will tell. We'll see. And Ian and I always kind of talk about this publicly. Like, there's always a good time to buy, sell, trade, rent, everything. And there's nothing wrong with, going heavy and buying lots of stuff now. This isn't necessarily a time that says, hey, I'm on the sidelines. It's to wait and see. Well, if you play the wait and see game, you're going to be continuing to wait and see forever, because that game's never stops. You can't time the market at the top. You can't time the market at the bottom. So if the deal works, and it works, and I think this type of strategy actually works out great, especially in a market like today where, you can get in, you can buy the property, or you can lease it and play the arbitrage game. Yep. As long as the cash flow and the numbers work, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you pay $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 for a property. Equity is kind of a fake number unless you need to unload it. Right. So
absolutely.
What does it matter? Hey, if you're getting $5,000 a month in rent, let's say you buy the property, you're getting $5,000 a month in rent from the short-term rentals. Well, guess what? You can almost pay for that property as high as you want, as long as you're nuts. I don't know, $4,000. I don't know what the margins look like inside your guys' business. But like, you don't have to worry about, hey, getting at a bargain basement price.
Yeah, and what you say, Jason, that right there is such a powerful point that I think a lot of people like overcomplicate. I can't tell you how many people, because I've spoken now at a handful of events about my success in the STRA, and I get constantly people coming up to me that have been in real estate for decades, and they're like, "Well, what about this?" And they show me pro formas. They show me all this thing. It's like a list of like 50 line items, and I'm like, "Listen, all I know is that this is how much I pay for rent, and this is how much I make." And that's all that matters, right? And like people often overcomplicate it. And honestly, a lot of the reason why I liked arbitrage is because it was that stupid simple. And sometimes people fail to make it that way to where like all I care about is like, hey, what can I make on this property? And there's easy ways to find that. Air DNA, Price Labs. What are other people making in this area? And what is my bottom line cost? And if you can just create that margin, to your point, Jason, who cares what you bought it for? Who cares about anything else? Your cash flow.
Yeah, absolutely. I got one more question for you before we end with our last question. But related, since we've been talking about arbitrage for a good part of this show, and I'm sure some folks might have this question. How long do you typically structure your leases with the original owner?
Yeah, really good question. So originally I did 2 years just so I could lock in the rate. But here's the thing, guys, like, to me, you're hedging your bet against the rental market that will always be there. And sure, the market's going to change, price might change, but I like the ability to be flexible within a year lease. Meaning, at the end of the lease, worst case scenario, they don't want me back. We can't come to terms. Guess what? I've already spent the money that I would have to spend to do another arbitrage in the furniture. So all I do is I just take the furniture and I just move it to another rental. I just renegotiate another term. Right. And so I like the ability to be flexible within a year, because the downside of arbitrage is if you're not cash flowing, then you have this fat liability that you have to pay and you're locked into for a year. Right. Yeah. So I like to be able to pivot, change, move, because you're hedging it against the rental market that'll always be there.
It's like house staging.
Yep. That's exactly it.
Bouncing from house to house. Nah, dude, that's super smart, man. Dude, you've been a wealth of knowledge, man. This has been really good. And so I always get excited talking to you. And like when we went out to California, I was like, God damn, all the way across the country for 48 hours. And it was well worth it when I showed up, man, because these are the conversations. This is what happens at masterminds. This is where you hear people that have positive outlook at life, not people sitting around a kitchen table, the end of the world's coming, we're fucked this, blah, 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 that. Dude, like too many people worry about the negative. Like you said, just go out there and do it, swing the bat, and it's going to work or it's not, and let's go. So, yeah. Jason, I think I'll give you the honor because I did so much talking, and let you ask Lamy our favorite question.
We like to ask all our guests at the end, what's a recent favorite book or podcast that you're listening to or you're reading that you'd recommend to the group?
Really good question. One thing that I've dived into, and I'm not a huge reader. Like I'm a listener, and even at that, like I'm sporadic. Like I'll be listening to excerpts of like 5 books at one time. But one with the turn of the economy that's helped me a ton is just the classic Rich Dad Poor Dad by Kiyosaki. And the reason why I think that book is more relevant today than it's ever been is just because of the resources out there to leverage debt to go find assets. That's how I've done it, guys, is I've leveraged other people's money. And to do that, I had to really change certain paradigms about money and how I thought it about money by way of that book. And so I'd say that's a huge one I'm sure everybody's read it. Most people listening have read it, but really diving into it again, especially in terms of the mindset of debt, is going to be huge in today's market. So.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I mean, even with creative financing, you're leveraging someone else's debt or someone else's money or credit or whatever it is for you to gain an asset. And I think that's a great way to look at it, man. So, dude, definitely appreciate you. Thank you for everything you shared. I think it was a great conversation. A lot of people get good stuff out of this. So appreciate you, man. Guys, if you guys got any good, or I'm sorry, shoot, let me do this. Lamy, we didn't even say how people can find you on the internet. How can people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you and get some more
good. My Instagram, DM me. I'm the one managing that account, trying to respond to all of them. Hailamek, Hailamek. And then my company is Elk Ridge MGMT. So you can find me there. Thanks, Jason and Ian. I appreciate you guys having me. This has been awesome.
Hell yeah, man. If you guys got good value out of this and you feel like someone needs to hear this, go ahead and share it. Or better yet, if you really enjoyed it, if you could leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, it helps us, bring in the best guests that we can find, people that are actually doing it. So, man, we appreciate you and look forward to catching up with you here soon.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lame.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.